Mouse, and I have the most perfect dress to start the look.
I'll try to make sense of that view later in the show. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. Why the Conservative Party simply cannot afford a civil war over the migrant emergency. That's in my digest straight after Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story tonight on GB News. The Police Service of Northern Ireland says dissident Republicans claim to be in possession now of police officers' details following an industrial-scale data leak. The PSNI mistakenly shared details of 10,000 members of staff on Tuesday. Well, a group set up to assess the risk to officers caused by the breach has already had more than 600 referrals. Chief Constable Simon Byrne said today he was deeply sorry and that the service is working hard to stop third parties from attempting to intimidate, corrupt or cause harm to serving officers.
You can only imagine the sort of inconceivable horror as people start to realise that maybe a loved one is being put in jeopardy by what they're seeing. There are a range of emotions, from people being somewhat pragmatic about, well, they already know who I am because I'm a neighbourhood officer, through to people being anxious, frustrated and really, really angry.
Well, the other top story on GB News today, 100,000 illegal migrants have now crossed the English Channel since 2018. The landmark figure was reached today as another 11 dinghies carrying another 550 people were intercepted attempting to cross the English Channel today. In a statement, the Home Office said the unacceptable number of people making these dangerous crossings is placing an unprecedented strain on our asylum system. And the number of people waiting to start routine hospital treatment in England has reached a new record high. NHS England found over 7.5 million people were waiting to start treatment at the end of June. That's the highest number since 2007. And cutting waiting lists is another of Rishi Sunak's key priorities for this year. In Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon has defended her government's use of taxpayers' money for travel upgrades. Scotland's former First Minister says that the spending probably totalled less than one flight taken by the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. £10,000, though, was spent in 3 years on VIP airport upgrades. Her successor, Humza Yousaf, has ordered a review. Today, the high street chain Wilko collapsed. The company's appointed administrators after failing to secure a rescue deal, putting 12,000 jobs at risk. The chain has 400 stores across the UK. And the Home Secretary's been saying today, anyone who took part in suspected looting on London's Oxford Street yesterday evening must be, in her words, hunted down and locked up. 9 people were arrested as police wielding batons clashed with dozens of youngsters. It followed posts on TikTok encouraging people to steal from a well-known sports store. Some outlets shut their doors as crowds gathered and officers issued 34 dispersal orders. Lastly, Virgin Galactic has completed its first space tourism flight, sending 3 passengers to the edge of space. The passengers enjoyed weightlessness, we believe, for around 5 minutes, as the VSS Unity reached 85 kilometres above the Earth. Richard Branson's company joins Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin and Elon Musk's SpaceX in the space tourism business. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A grim milestone putting British lives and livelihoods under threat. Earlier today, another 400 people arrived in 8 small boats via our unsecured southern border, which means that GB News can now confirm that 100,000 migrants have crossed the Channel since the start of this crisis in 2018. This national emergency threatens to overwhelm the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, ahead of the next election, with his categorical pledge to stop the boats looking a near certain failure without the most dramatic action that he doesn't seem to have the guts to pursue. Meanwhile, deluded Conservative wet MPs continue to tear their own party apart after their deputy chairman, Lee Anderson, said exactly what the majority of the country is thinking. If the arrivals from France don't want to enjoy the relative luxury of the Bibby Stockholm barge, then they can F off back. The Red Wall warrior doubled down on GB News today.
I tell you this, Martin, and many of your GB News viewers will probably agree with me on this, is I have stopped in worst accommodation in Skegness, in Blackpool, in Scarborough, in Whitby, all over the country. And did I moan? No, I went for a nice weekend or a week, had a lovely time, didn't complain to anybody. And anybody is complaining about the standard of luxury accommodation, because that's what it is in this country. Now, I stand by my words, they should go back to where they come from.
Cue woke hysteria from the walking dead of the Tory party, who really should go off and just join the Lib Dems, OK? Listen to this bitter Tory ex-minister who branded Lee chaotic and unsophisticated. Another ludicrously told The Independent he was a fascist who does not represent the same party as me. Former Attorney General Dominic Greaves went on the record raging that such foul language will turn floating voters off and risk making the Tories the even nastier party, before adding that it was a sad commentary on the current state of the Conservative Party when its deputy chairman resorts to crude and threatening profanities. Another former Tory minister went even further, saying this.
This is as big a problem for France as it is for us.
How deluded are these losers? And I actually mean literal losers. Because if they think Lee Anderson, rather than the invasion via the Channel being overseen by wicked people smugglers, if they think Lee Anderson is the problem, then they can say hello to a historic landslide wipeout. With this sort of division, the prospect of the Conservatives campaigning to leave the ECHR, as they must, seems an increasingly remote prospect. Inertia is gripping every aspect of our political establishment over how to tackle this issue. There's even confusion now over whether tents bought by the Home Secretary to house 2,000 migrants at RAF Wethersfield in Essex will be erected. What are you waiting for? Put up the tents now, OK? And make it absolutely clear to illegal migrants in Calais that they're not guaranteed luxury hotel accommodation the moment they set foot on our shores. Because let me tell you, time is running out. To respond now, my superstar panel, the journalist and political commentator Suzanne Evans, Conservative peer Lord Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Sean, how frustrated does this make you as a proud Conservative to see the wets in your party believe that Lee Anderson and his comments, which personally I agree with, some people might say he shouldn't have used that fruity language, fine, but I think the majority of the country are actually with Lee on this, and they seem to think he's a bigger problem than actually stopping the boats?
Look, the way I see it, the fruity language was uncalled for, and what it's done, it's taken away focus from what we really should be talking about. You've all of a sudden see people using words like fascism. They don't know what fascists are if they think that's what happened here. But what it's all doing is not letting us focus on the reality. The answer to this is international. It's going to cost a lot of money, but what was interesting is the tents in particular, I think they're an admission of the huge cost. Let me be clear, we have to make sure anybody who arrives here, we deal with them with a level of decency. So if we decide that's tents, we must be very careful to make sure they are living in decent circumstances.
They will be.
But let's be clear, they never bought them because they want to send a message that it's tough when you get here. They bought them because they can't afford to keep putting people in hotels. Yeah. That's what's really going on.
Well, no, I know that, but the point is it might also act as a small deterrent too. Because, look, at the end of the day, being on the luxury Bibby Stockholm barge, that ain't a deterrent. Being in a four-star luxury hotel ain't a deterrent. So maybe if you're in a tent in the Essex Forest, it's a bit more of a deterrent. I don't deny it, because
what it is, you've got to... What people seem to conveniently forget is that this is a commercial enterprise. And the commercial enterprise is probably showing people pictures of the barges. So showing people pictures of the tents...
Well, right now it's showing pictures of luxury hotels.
Yeah, will be a deterrent. But we have to make sure that we maintain our level of decency. And just to be clear, there was a Conservative minister who said that we're wrong about all of this. Actually, he's wrong. France doesn't have the same problem we have because France can send them here, and also we're giving France an awful lot of money.
Suzanne Evans, you left the Conservative Party 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
In part, I imagine, because of these wets who seem to frustrate any genuine Conservative policy these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my leaving was also partly because I wanted to leave the European Union. And, you know, David Cameron, when he stood as leader of the Conservative Party, said that he was going to stand up to the EU, he was going to renegotiate our relationship. None of that happened. He just basically capitulated and became part of the EU machinery, in my view. But, yeah, it was also the wokery that he introduced to the Conservative Party as well. And I just felt, I've had enough. This party isn't Conservative anymore. And I think now, 10 years later, we've seen that become even more obvious. I mean, how can somebody in Lee Anderson's own party call him a fascist? As you said, they don't know the meaning of the word.
Former Tory minister.
It's insane. They're basically calling all their voters fascists as well, because the vast majority of people...
But this civil war will destroy the party, though, won't it? Because the problem is you've got people like the Attorney General saying, oh, no, we absolutely can't campaign to leave the ECHR. Well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to. You're going to have to if you want to win the election, because you're not going to stop the boats. So if you're literally going to the election on a policy of more of the same when it comes to illegal migration, you are going to be wiped out. And it's not that Labour are going to do any better. It's just that Conservative voters do not believe that this policy approach is working. So I think the Tories must go to the election on, at the very least, a referendum to leave the ECHR.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think what the Tories are thinking is that they actually have got the Stop the Boats, the Illegal Migration Act through Parliament now. It's got royal assent. It's being held up by the courts, but they're saying we don't need to leave the ECHR to do that. So I'm not sure they're going to do that. And there is, I think, I kind of see that argument, but me, somebody as Brexity as I am and as sort of very opposed to the kind of woke cancel culture as I am, even I would have doubts actually about running that as a policy at the general election, to be absolutely honest. So I think if I'm having concerns about that, I'm not really sure how much of a vote...
I would question, though, when did it become woke to not be comfortable with housing 6 people on a floating barge indefinitely, detaining people indefinitely?
They're not detained.
Which is what
Amy, they're not detained.
Which is what they are. They cannot work.
You've already said a factual inaccuracy.
They've been criminalised.
They can come on and off the barge.
The illegal
and actually,
migration
they get free taxis, apparently. So they're not detained.
They do not have an existence.
No, but why did you say they're detained?
They are detained in the sense that they cannot work, they cannot contribute to society, they cannot get jobs. They are suspended indefinitely.
Because other
and
rights
that has
are
been
illegally.
proven
to be illegally.
Absolutely detrimental to their mental health in entirety. Deterrents do not work. If you think that that's people...
OK, so your message is, come to the UK illegally and we're going to allow you to work and enter our economy. OK, what do you think happens then,
maybe
Amy?
grow our economy and contribute to society.
Where are they living? Where are they getting hospital treatment? Have you seen there are record waiting lists in the NHS today? Do you know that?
You can't blame asylum seekers for the NHS waiting list.
You're missing the point.
That's insane.
What I'm saying is,
do you know the NHS is on the whole run by migrants?
That's not true.
Can I just address one thing? Because everybody's had quite the turn, and I haven't really had a turn yet, so let me have a turn. The Home Office has done research into whether this idea of deterrence works. It doesn't work. The things that...
Worked in Australia.
No, that was different.
Stop. It wasn't.
It wasn't aiming. When people arrange to come here, they don't think, they don't know anything about benefit system. They don't know anything about the hotels and not hotels. Their reasoning is this is Home Office data. It's geopolitical.
Sorry, you think I trust
conflict,
the civil servants
it's terrorism,
in the Home Office?
It's economic conditions of the origin countries. These are vulnerable people looking for a better existence.
Let me just repeat, by coming from France. Amy, can I just ask you, do you have a problem with housing migrants in tents?
Of course. I have a big problem with housing some of the most vulnerable people from some of the most disgusting conditions in the whole of the world.
How dare you talk about Albania like that? It's a first world country. It's a NATO country.
Do you know my main problem, though? My main
paid thousands to come here.
Why would you? And why would you do that?
You are backing.
How insane!
Why would it disgusting trafficking operation. And for you to say, when did it become, you know, not acceptable to put people in tents? When did it become acceptable to open the borders of this country to criminals whose background we don't know where they come from, we don't know.
And what about the British people living in poverty, Amy? Amy, what about the British people living in poverty who would love to be in a 4-star hotel all paid for with your food?
OK, first of all, they're not in a 4-star hotel. Secondly, our woeful state of our welfare system is not to do with people seeking asylum in this country. To pick up on the point that Suzanne made, it's not the problem of where they are currently, it's the point that they cannot be processed. The backlog of the Home Office is what is causing...
Hold on.
People have not stopped coming.
Hold on, Amy. What you're doing...
But to define them as criminals is what I have the biggest problem.
Amy is doing that classic thing where they're cherry-picking the points that support their argument. Let's be clear, these people are coming here and they're going to add pressure to our system, and you cannot
They would also contribute to our system.
No, not before they add pressure.
We don't know who they are. We've literally criminalised them and stagnated them in hotels.
Suzanne Evans, my fabulous superstar panel. Don't worry, they're with me all night. Not going anywhere. But coming up, Diane Abbott's vile migrant tweet has left her political career hanging by a thread. So does Keir Starmer need to act rapidly and kick her out for good from the Labour Party? Former Tory minister and Conservative firebrand Anne Widdecombe gets stuck into that shortly. But up next, in the clash, a controversial new children's book is set to depict Princess Diana's battle with bulimia before blaming her condition on Prince Charles's, or now King Charles's, affair. But is it appropriate to push such a difficult subject on kids while dragging the King's name through the mud? Lady Victoria Harvey and Amy Ansell debate that next. But what do you think? Dan at gbnews.com. Vote in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. Back after this.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to. by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Anne Widdecombe and my Royal Masterminds coming up, but first the clash. And the memory of Princess Diana will be invoked again next month when a controversial new children's book blaming her bulimia on King Charles's affair hits bookshelves. Illustrations from the Little People Big Dreams series of reads shows Diana slumped in the kitchen of Kensington Palace with the words, "Whenever she felt alone, she felt better by eating all the cakes she could find in the royal kitchens." It went on, even though her life seemed like a fairy tale, Diana soon realised the prince's heart belonged to someone else. Now, the book has sparked outrage from critics, including many sufferers of bulimia. But what do you think? Is it appropriate to put such a difficult subject into a children's book and drag the king's name through the mud? Doing battle on this now is the socialite Lady Victoria Harvey and social commentator Amy Ann Zell. Lady V, is this appropriate, especially blaming King Charles for Diana's bulimia? Because I've actually spoken to a lot of eating disorders campaign eating disorder campaigners about this today, who tell me that's really dodgy territory and they don't actually think it's making the right point about eating disorders, trying to blame it on another individual.
Yeah, but it's not just that. I think it's just opening up, giving little children ideas of throwing up and eating cake. They wouldn't even know about bulimia. Do you know,
so
like
it's an adult theme.
I just think at that age, it's just like, you know, people teaching children now what sex is at age 6 or 7. I think it's too young. It's going to give them ideas now that they're going to think, OK, so if I'm upset with someone or when I'm older, my boyfriend leaves me or my husband leaves me, I'm going to go and throw up and eat lots of cake. Because I think that is going to, like, resonate and that they're going to actually have that in their head, in their unconsciousness, and they're going to think about it. And maybe
whereas actually eating disorders like this are very complex and aren't usually related specifically to marital difficulties.
But it's teaching them, oh, this is what Princess Diana has done, so maybe you should try it.
So it glamorises it.
Yeah, I think so.
Amy Ann Zell, you think it's great that the book is going to raise awareness like this?
I think this series is a great educational tool. I actually have one.
Which one's
this is the Steve Jobs one.
Thank God you haven't bought me the Greta Thunberg one, OK?
That
we would be going.
I think that would be in the
bonfire. Yeah.
No, but it is a great educational tool. My son is he's 7 today, actually.
Oh, happy birthday. What's his name?
Jacob.
Happy birthday, Jacob.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Jacob.
Named after Rees Mogg, I imagine.
Yes, actually, my son is in the same class as his son, Sixtus. But anyway, yes, so I love these books. This series is brilliant. And what it does is it addresses issues. So whether it's bulimia, with Steve Jobs, for example, he dropped out of university, he meditates, he was adopted. So subject matters that children of 6, 7, 8 years old wouldn't necessarily...
So you want little 7-year-old Jacob learning about bulimia, do you?
I want him
a different
it's
topic.
Better that Jacob learns
Meditating and throwing up is two different.
It's better that I'm talking to Jacob about bulimia versus him seeing something about it on YouTube or seeing something on the news about
Lady
it.
V, one thing that concerns me about these books is they are very woke.
Do you think what age should they know about these things? I don't think kids should know about things like eating disorders until they're like teenagers. A 7-year-old trying to tell them about calories and weight, that's going to give them issues.
But bulimia hits people sometimes who are 6, 7, 8 years old. I tell you, it's true. I was looking at the Priory website today, and sure enough, there are children who are 6 and 7 years old.
Because maybe their parents had it. They've got that idea from somewhere. Because a 6-year-old doesn't know what bulimia is.
Can I just ask about the royal side of this? Because one thing I'm aware of with these books, is that uber woke. They're prepared by wokesters.
These are super,
They take a woke view on the world.
Yeah.
And don't you think it's a bit unfair that yet again it's the king who has been blamed? Everything connected to anything that Diana went through is always blamed on the king.
That is a really good point, because we don't actually know that how long she actually had this, or did she actually have it when she was happy in the marriage at all, or did it just happen when, you know, Camilla came into the picture? We don't really know that because we weren't there. So.
Indeed. I mean, Diana herself did talk openly about her bulimia battle, including in the now contested Martin Bashir interview, and also in the very famous book, of course, written by Angie
She
Moore.
said it was a cry for help, right? And so, it sounds like it was a cry for help, and she probably, like, it was a way for her to get some sort of attention and you know, see a therapist or see somebody, and no one.
So maybe it is fair to blame it on Charles then, Amy, in that case.
Yes, and it's okay to make that association. Maybe it was that, maybe it was something else. The author chose to relate it to King Charles, Prince Charles at the time. Yeah. So that's okay, because what they're doing is they're showing you there is a causation, an issue that caused her to feel that.
But lots of eating disorder campaigners deny that there's any causation, though.
Right.
It's just another way to see the issue. And ultimately, the author is bringing this issue to the minds of children who need to see it in a sensitive way versus seeing it in a sensationalized way on the news.
But do you not think that this is going to give children ideas, though?
No, because oftentimes...
Like, a kid is going to read that book and think, oh, I'm going to look up bulimia and see what this is, and maybe I'm going to try it.
But usually these are being read with a positive spin, whether it's from the teacher's perspective, from a parent's perspective. This is introducing children to some great people, teaching them to dream big, because that's what this is all about. Be bold, be brave, dream big. And it's not necessarily about the bulimia per se. It's just showing children that this woman, Princess Diana, who seemed to have a perfect life, might not have had a perfect life.
I know, but when they're that young,
look what she did accomplish in her short life.
But when they're small, you have to protect them from the evils of the world. You can't tell them.
They're exposed to so much anyway, because...
The publishers have certainly got what they want, though, which is a hell of a lot of
We're talking about it, right? So
exactly.
Lady Victoria Harvey, Amy Ansell, thank you so much. I think the biggest revelation there, that Amy named her 7-year-old son after Jacob Rees-Mogg. Absolutely love it. So who do you agree with? Is it time for a new children's book to depict Princess Diana's bulimia? Lee on Twitter writes, let us remember Diana as the sweet princess she was. There are many other traits they could use to depict her, and this should not be one of them. I'm actually with you on that, Lee. Veronica writes, by all means highlight the very serious issue, but please leave Diana out of it. When alive, she was brave enough to speak out personally and highlight the issue. Let her rest in peace. Find another way to highlight the problem. And from Faye, this is via Twitter, I thought they were throwing kids' books out because they were too triggering. How is this not triggering? Right. Very good point, actually. Sometimes the woke folk are a little bit hypocritical on these issues. Your verdict's in. 14% of you agree that it's right for this children's book to depict Princess Diana's bulimia. A whopping 86% of you agree with Lady V on this. And, of course, if you or anyone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, you can get more information by visiting beateatingdisorders.org.uk. Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie is on standby for another explosive appearance later in the show, and he's got plenty to say about the biased British bashing corporation. First, though, the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest broadcast for GB News. I'm Greg Dewhurst. We're going to see increasing risk of showers as we move towards the weekend, but there will be some sunny spells, just turning a little cooler too. If we look at the bigger picture, this area of low pressure moves in another area of low pressure for the weekend, bringing the risk of showers, though not as windy as recent weekends. For this evening, it's been fine end of the day for many, but we do have this area of rain pushing north and eastwards. It could be heavier for a time across Northern Ireland as it crosses into Scotland too. Elsewhere, generally quite a cloudy, warm, muggy night to come. A lot of cloud around, some drizzle over the hills. Temperatures remaining in double figures, 17, 18 degrees is a low for some of us. Bit of a cloudy start to Friday, still some rain across Scotland, heavy at times, pushing away northeastwards, and then slowly through the morning it starts to brighten up. We could see this area of cloud push into southeast England though to give some showery rain for the afternoon. Elsewhere, bright afternoon, sunny spells and scattered showers, turning breezy around western coast, making it feel a little cooler here. Still highs reaching 27 degrees towards East Anglia. And then Saturday, this low approaches us, gives spells of rain across the north and the west of the UK as the winds pick up. Best of the drier, brighter weather holding on towards the southeast. But even here, we'll see some showers moving in later on in the day and quite blustery. Temperatures a little cooler too, and that continues into Sunday and Monday with further showers and temperatures a little below average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up, Prince William tops the royal popularity stakes in America among both Republican and Democratic voters. So is US media superstar Megyn Kelly right that trailing Harry and Meghan have failed stateside and that they, quote, remain loathed? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampy, give their expert take shortly. But next, does Keir Starmer need to act rapidly and ban Diane Abbott from the Labour Party after her disgraceful migrant death jibe? No nonsense, former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe's here, Big Woody style, in just 3 minutes.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, up shortly. First, though, Big Witty style with former Tory minister Anne Widdecombe. And Diane Abbott sparked outrage yesterday after writing this about the tragic deaths of 41 migrants in a shipwreck off the coast of Italy. These migrants have indeed effed off to the bottom of the sea. Just horrific. I mean, she deleted the tweet. It looked like it was a humorless dig at Lee Anderson, who spoke for many when he made these remarks to the Daily Express.
If they don't like barges, then they should f*** off back to France.
Now, Abbott had the whip removed by Keir Starmer earlier this year after comments she made in The Observer were deemed anti-Semitic, but she remains a Labour Party member. So, Anne, goodness me, new low from Diane Abbott, once a Labour Party front bencher?
Certainly a new low, and one would hope it would be an all-time low, because I really don't see how she could get much lower. But she's had the whip removed. When you have the whip removed, you're no longer a member of the party, and you may not stand in the party's interest in the following election. Therefore, I think what Keir Starmer should say is that he believes that her constituency association should think very carefully about whether or not to select another candidate. But having said all of that, we believe in free speech, or certainly I believe in free speech. And even when that freedom is exercised distastefully, as it certainly was on this occasion, even when it's exercised distastefully, there is still, or should be, the freedom to speak and to say what you think. And then, of course, to face the consequences. And if the consequences are that her constituency doesn't want her any longer, then that is one thing that can happen. But if the consequences are that people are prepared to put up with that, then, you know, that is free speech. You can't say we're going to have free speech as long as the person exercising the freedom says what we like, because the instant you've done that, you've actually become just like the woke brigade.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I think it's absolutely fine that she tweeted that. I'm not saying that Twitter should have deleted her or she should be arrested or anything like that. But what I do think, Anne, is it shows how a lot of the hard left view the migrant crisis. And to them, they actually want to politicise the loss of life. And I think that's what's really bad. And where are you on Lee's comments? Because personally, I had no issue with them, but all week, guests on my show have been very divided.
No, I've no issue with it at all. I rather think that somebody in his public position should use perhaps more careful language in terms of the verb that he chose to use. But the sentiment, I entirely endorse. I mean, you know, if you don't like what you're coming to here, then for goodness sake, stay in France or go back to France. These people are in a perfectly safe country in France. They do not need safety. Nobody at Calais, nobody trying to get over here from France is in any need of a safe refuge. They already have it. And why don't they want to stay there? For the simple reason that they know that when their asylum claims are processed, the French, who are very hard-headed about this, will simply say, no, you don't get asylum. Come over here, and we don't have national identity cards, we don't routinely practice detention, we do have a very flourishing underground economy, and so they come over here, and the chances of their being ultimately removed are very small. That's what attracts them. That's why they are coming. So to come on that basis and then to moan about the conditions, anybody who actually wants a safe refuge would really welcome being on that barge, feeling free from the persecution that they were trying to get away from, feeling free from the fear that they would have been living in daily. They would welcome almost anything. And yet they're getting very uppity about it. Well, OK. That, to me, doesn't suggest a desperate asylum seeker.
No, indeed. And, of course, they're coming from France. They're coming from that first world country of France. But look, Ad, I want to move on because the headmaster of Eton, very posh school, you know, where the royals go, where Boris went and everything, has been accused of launching an aggressively woke cultural revolution at the elite institution. In an interview with former Etonian and reality star Spencer Matthews, Simon Henderson, who is nicknamed Trendy Hendy, hit back at critics of his teaching philosophy. Watch.
You've also been described and criticised for having a woke agenda.
If by woke people mean, you know, I believe in kindness, understanding, respect, tolerance, treating people decently, trying to have empathy, trying to understand things from other people's perspectives, then, you know, guilty as charged.
Look, Anne, I'm going to be honest with you. That's not the definition of woke, but it sounds like he's guilty as charged. What do you think about even the most traditional institutions like Eton jumping on this PC woke bandwagon?
Well, of course, you know, he gave his own definition of woke there, which simply means being kind and respectful. Well, that could be a definition of Christian. That could be a definition of being well brought up. That is not woke. So, I mean, that for, you know, somebody who is supposed to be teaching boys to analyse and to reason and to argue and to understand the meaning of words, that's a pretty treacherous definition of woke coming there from Trendy Hendy. And yeah, we all know that woke is now in all the institutions, you know, but that it should be in Eton, where young minds will be affected, I think is worrying. On the other hand, at Eton, they're pretty well trained in debate and in riposte and in reasoning and in rhetoric, and I suspect they might give Trendy Hendy a hard time. I rather hope they do.
Anne Whittaker, Big Witty style, great to have you back. Thank you, Anne. We'll speak next week. But coming up, as social media fuels a youth campaign to terrorise London's Oxford Street and youngsters clash with cops, is Superwoman Suella right to warn against the UK suffering the same fate as lawless democratic cities in the US? My superstar panel gets stuck into British law and order soon. But next, Prince Harry's solo Japan jaunt continues with a shopping spree for his wife, all while Meghan goes alone and the US at the Barbie movie and Taylor Swift concert. So are the Sussexes still a united force? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Cavill and Phil Dampier, with their inside take next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My Royal Masterminds are up now. Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. And after appearing at a sports summit in Japan, it's Singapore and not home to Montecito next for the Duke of Sussex, where he will play in his charity's polo match. But he still had Meghan on his mind, according to this social media post from fellow polo player Nacho Figueres, with the two of them, quote, shopping for their wives. The Duchess, meanwhile, doesn't seem to be missing her husband too badly after trips to see the new Barbie movie and Taylor Swift were leaked to the US media. There are also reports she's preparing to go it alone on Instagram, managing to secure the handle @Meghan. So, Lady C, we were told in the past that Harry and Meghan were like salt and pepper. They only worked when they were together. After the failure of Netflix, the failure of Spotify, really the failure of the Hollywood move altogether, there seems to be a very different strategy going on.
Yes, of course. There's a total separation of church and state, let's put it that way. But also, you know, there's a very cynical exercise taking place here, because Nacho Figueres has made the point that Harry and he are shopping for their wives. Harry had never shopped for his wife before. This is to silence the rumours that there is trouble in paradise. But I mean, you know, the more they play up with antics like this, is the more that people realise that there is trouble in paradise. Otherwise, they wouldn't need to be denying the obvious.
Phil Dampier, do you think there's trouble in paradise? Or, Phil, is this professional? Because Meghan, who wants to be a big star, has realised that the projects as the Sussexes aren't working, so she's going to try and reposition herself as Meghan. I found it fascinating, Phil. Her every move is now being leaked to the American media at the moment, like the New York Post. You know, she goes to the Barbie movie with Portia de Rossi on her birthday. It's leaked to the New York Post. She goes to the Taylor Swift concert on her own with a girlfriend. It's leaked to the New York Post.
Yeah, good evening, Dan. I think we can guess who's doing the leaking, can't we? Their PR people. But, you're tempted to ask, aren't you, with Harry's trip to Japan, where's the beef? Well, apparently in his case, the beef was the Kobe beef he was eating.
Yum,
with
yum, yum.
But yummy, he had two nice meals. He hugged some kids from a choir in South Africa. He got on stage and told us how he lives for charity. And, of course, he just got on with it out there and basically told us what a great philanthropist he was. But, you know, yet again, no real substance to it, off to play polo. From the outside, it just looks like another jaunt, doesn't it? An all-expenses-paid jaunt. Meanwhile, she's out enjoying herself. Yes, they're going their separate ways. And apart from the book deal which they've signed or Netflix have signed, just looks very much as if they're doing separate projects. So,
well, of course, and that project, they're not even on screen together. They're just producing it. So I guess whereas the Sussexes have failed miserably to crack America, other members of the royal family having no such trouble, a bombshell new poll has found that Harry's brother and all-time rival now, the Prince of Wales, is America's most popular public figure, ranking above Donald Trump and President Zelensky. This is in spite of Harry's character assassination attempt against Wales in that Netflix reality show and his autobiography. US media superstar, good friend of the show, Megyn Kelly, reacted by tweeting, "Paging Harry and Meghan, your campaign failed. You remain loathed and the Prince and Princess of Wales beloved." Lady C, I can't imagine this news went down very well in Montecito.
Well, I'm sure that Meghan was doing her typical thing is, I can't stand it. But the fact of the matter is, William has proven that even Americans don't want royals to be interfering with politics. Both the Republicans and the Democrat supporters in the United States of America have voted for William. They do not want royalty involved with politics. And also, I mean, with due respect, William supersedes both Trump and Biden. I mean, both of whom are in negative figures. So, you know, I think there's a message there somewhere that Harry could actually begin to adopt, because he and Meghan have completely breached every rule where royalty and politics are concerned. And they have waded in favor of the Democrats. And the American people don't want it. You know, they didn't fight a civil war and have, well, I suppose it's not a civil war, it was the War of Independence, the American Revolutionary War. They didn't fight it to get free of the British, to then have a British prince and his rather frowsy wife interfering with American politics.
No, indeed. Indeed. Now, look, Phil, it really wasn't a good week for Harry, was it? Because the royal family finally made this decision to remove his HRH title from their official website. It means he's now only above Prince Andrew on the page. Phil, what's the timing about? Is this a power play from the palace?
I think it's just death by 1,000 cuts down, to be honest. I think they're slowly but surely moving away from them. They're slowly sidelining them. You know, he's been. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong notes here. He's definitely slowly being edged out. I don't think he's going to. I don't think the King's going to take away the titles. I don't think he wants to do that. I think he feels that will make the situation worse. But there's no doubt that they are slowly being edged out. I don't know why it's taken them so long to get around to doing this on the website. Maybe it's just they haven't enough staff to police these things. There's so many things on that website. Sometimes when you get on there, you get very confused. But it's definitely something which they've decided to do, and it just shows there's no way back for them. I don't think there's any chance for a reconciliation in the near future. And this is just another indication that, they're on the way out.
Lady C, did you find the timing significant in any way?
I think it most likely is somewhat significant, because one of the things that they did do was alter the fact that Harry and Meghan were serving the King, while previously it was they were serving the Queen. And I think this shows palace ineptitude at its absolute peak. You know, I mean, those of us who have had any dealings with the palace in even the most limited way will know that some of them are extremely inefficient and inept. And, you know, the advice they give is not worth having. And, I mean, that website should be completely rejigged, and Harry and Meghan should not have the place they have on it at all. I mean,
you think they need to go all together because they don't have a role now? They should just be wiped off?
I think they absolutely should go all together, because irrespective of his place in the line of succession, there are other members of the royal family who are now filling in for him, like as councillors of state, etc. And they're not mentioned on the website. Princess Beatrice, for instance. So there's absolutely no reason for him to be there. And it's actually an insult to the British people. And it's an insult to the supporters of the monarchy that this website still is somewhat...
Well, with everything that he said, indeed. Lady C, Phil D, brilliant as ever. My royal masterminds, thank you both so much. We will speak on Monday. Both sides of the story here on GB News. So when rumours circulated last month that Harry and Meghan's relationship was under strain, a source close to the couple told the New York Post page 6 column, any speculation of a breakup is false. It's not true. It's literally made up. Now, coming up, Margaret Thatcher's former advisor Niall Gardner is on a mission to get Prince Harry's US visa application made public to see if he admitted previous drug use. The scandal has now inspired brand new legislation in America that's named after the Duke's tell-all memoir, Spare. Niall, now working for US think tank The Heritage Foundation, reveals the latest in his battle for transparency shortly. But next, Suella Braverman has rallied against our lurch to lawlessness as dozens of youths descended on London's Oxford Street after being whipped into a frenzy on social media. So is she right to call for the troublemakers to be jailed? My superstar panel will debate that imminently, and we'll have tomorrow's first newspaper's front pages for you, hot off the press. Don't go anywhere.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest broadcast for GB News. I'm Greg Dewhurst. We're going to see increasing risk of showers as we move towards the weekend, but there will be some sunny spells, just turning a little cooler too. If we look at the bigger picture, this area of low pressure moves in another area of low pressure for the weekend, bringing the risk of showers, though not as windy as recent weekends. For this evening, it's been fine end of the day for many, but we do have this area of rain pushing north and eastwards. It could be heavier for a time across Northern Ireland as it crosses into Scotland too. Elsewhere, generally quite a cloudy, warm, muggy night to come. A lot of cloud around, some drizzle over the hills. Temperatures remaining in double figures, 17, 18 degrees as a low for some of us. Bit of a cloudy start to Friday, still some rain across Scotland, heavy at times, pushing away northeastwards, and then slowly through the morning it starts to brighten up. We could see this area of cloud push into southeast England though to give some showery rain for the afternoon. Elsewhere, bright afternoon, sunny spells and scattered showers, turning breezy around western coast, making it feel a little cooler here. Still highs reaching 27 degrees towards East Anglia. And then Saturday, this low approaches us, gives spells of rain across the north and the west of the UK as the winds pick up. Best of the drier, brighter weather holding on towards the southeast. But even here, we'll see some showers moving in later on in the day and quite blustery. Temperatures a little cooler too, and that continues into Sunday and Monday with further showers and temperatures a little below average.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the British bashing corporation strikes again. After taking a break from slacking off GB News, Bitter Bead presenter Nick Robinson fails to hide his lefty bias after wrongly claiming Lee Anderson said asylum seekers should F off home.
But the phrase he used was F off back to France. I misquoted him earlier and said F off home. F off back to Francis.
That was his mealy-mouthed correction, but is this further proof that the Beeb and its cabal of metropolitan elites are out of touch with Great Britain's? Lead Suit legend Calvin McKenzie fired up on this. He's uncancelled later this hour. Also tonight, a social media campaign to raid shops on London's Oxford Street sparks clashes between cops and dozens of street rats. So, have we lost control of our streets? And is Suella Braverman right to warn against our country suffering the same lawlessness as the US? My superstar panel debate that next. And tonight, I'm joined by Suzanne Evans, Sean Bailey, and Amy Nicole Turner. Plus, Prince Harry's drug use inspires fresh legislation stateside. The man battling to make the Duke's visa public, Niall Gardner, gives the latest on the fight for transparency through the newly proposed, I have to say very cleverly named, Spare Act. Plus, a London hospital rebrands women, quote, patients of childbearing potential. So, is extreme gender ideology putting the nation's health at risk? Meanwhile, Disney pulls a Dylan Mulvaney by hiring a gender-binary influencer with he, him pronouns who dresses up as Minnie Mouse. So after recent flops at the box office, when will the Mouse House learn that going woke means going broke? That's all to come in the media buzz. Rishi Sunak's back from holiday soon too, but he's already earned a nomination in tonight's Greatest British Union Jackass, Poor Bloke. Tomorrow's newspaper front page is here in moments as well. First though, Bolly and Middlehurst with the news.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story on GB News tonight. The police service of Northern Ireland says dissident Republicans claim now to be in possession of officers' details following an industrial-scale data leak. The PSNI mistakenly shared details of 10,000 members of staff on Tuesday. Well, a group set up to assess the risk this has caused to officers by the breach has had more than 600 referrals already. Chief Constable Simon Byrne has gone on record saying he's deeply sorry and that the service is working hard to stop third parties from attempting to intimidate, corrupt or cause harm to serving officers.
You can only imagine the sort of inconscionable horror as people start to realise that maybe a loved one is being put in jeopardy by what they're seeing. There are a range of emotions from people being somewhat pragmatic about, well, they already know who I am because I'm a neighbourhood officer, through to people being anxious, frustrated and really, really angry.
Well, the other main story today on GB News, more than 100,000 illegal migrants have now crossed the English Channel since 2018. The landmark figure was reached as another 11 dinghies carrying 550 people were intercepted attempting to cross the English Channel illegally today. In a statement, the Home Office said the unacceptable number of people making these dangerous crossings is placing an unprecedented strain on our asylum system. Meanwhile, the number of people waiting to start routine hospital treatment in England has reached a new record high. NHS England found over 7.5 million people were still waiting to start treatment at the end of June. That's the highest number since 2007. Cutting waiting lists is another of Rishi Sunak's key priorities for this year. In Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon has defended her government's use of taxpayers' money for travel upgrades. Scotland's former First Minister said the spending probably totalled less than just one flight taken by the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, in a private jet. But £10,000 was spent in 3 years on VIP airport upgrades. Her successor, Humza Yousaf, has ordered a review. The high street chain Wilko collapsed today. The company's appointed administrators after failing to secure a rescue deal, putting about 12,000 jobs at risk. The chain has 400 shops across the UK. Now, lastly, Virgin Galactic has completed its first space tourism flight, sending 3 passengers to the very edge of space. The passengers enjoyed weightlessness for around 5 minutes as the VSS Unity reached 85 kilometres above the Earth. Richard Branson's company joins Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin and Elon Musk's SpaceX in the space tourism business. You're with GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Back now to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. First front pages are in. So let's go to The Independent first, which leads with Expose, the Great British Car Insurance Con. The paper says premiums have soared to record highs as prices are hiked by 50% in a year. The Metro's headline reads High Street hammered, and that's, of course, reporting on the British high street brand Wilko. 400 stores, 12,500 jobs at risk. Really, really worrying news. Bad for the high street. My superstar panel back with me now. The journalist and political commentator Suzanne Evans, Conservative fare Lord Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Now, for a disturbing snapshot into lawless Britain. Gangs of youths caused mayhem on Oxford Street in London yesterday, inspired by a viral TikTok that allegedly incited a mob to steal from a well-known sports store. So dozens of yobs descended on central London and came to blows with police while petrified shoppers sought refuge inside barricaded stores. Here are some of the scenes that have shocked the country.
Run him in. Here we go.
Makes me absolutely sick, so furious. That's the London that we're meant to be showing off to the rest of the world. Police in the end only made 9 arrests, and a furious Superwoman Suala demanded that those responsible must be hunted down and locked up before warning that Britain can't slide into lawlessness like that seen in some American cities. The Home Sec was, of course, referring to the post-BLM crime wave that's seen widespread shoplifting in liberal states like California, where theft is pretty much decriminalised now. Watch. And sadly, we are heading that way. We are heading that way because shoplifting in this country is virtually decriminalised. Now, that's the fact that they don't want to tell you. Sean Bailey, on days like this, when I see what's going on in Sadiq Khan's London, I am so sad that you didn't get those few thousand extra votes that you needed when you were running against the failed London mayor. But this is a huge concern, Sean. I think we are sliding now into that lawlessness that Braverman talks about.
Look, if we dig our heels in now, we don't need to, but let's look at the historical nature of this. When Sadiq Khan ran for mayor the first time round, he said he'd slow down, he'd halt, stop and search. You're seeing the results of that because the police were starting to lose their authority and their presence on the street. Do you remember when a group of students attacked CCHQ, many a Labour MP praised them and told them they're doing the right thing? Well, now you see the results of that. Sadiq Khan called Just Stop Oil his allies, but they've disrupted many hundreds of thousands of Londoners' lives. So if you're sat at home now as a young child...
Well, look at how we reacted to the BLM protests.
Exactly, but if you're sat at home now as a young child, you think, well, they're allowed to wreck the shops, why can't we? And if someone wants to organise that, of course people will join in. But this is important. People on the left, I'd say this to you, yes, you're supporting lawlessness now because it suits you, but imagine for a second this continues. These incidences will get bigger and bigger and more deadly. We need to support the police to do their job, but also we need to pick people up. There's people now who've had a visit from the police because of something they wrote on Twitter or on Facebook. Yeah, and now we're complaining that...
Police need to focus on real crime.
Exactly.
They need to focus on real crime. Amy Nicole, what shocks me, though, is you don't think any of these street rats, these criminals, should be locked up. How on earth can you justify that? Because we are slipping into the type of society that I don't want to be a part of.
Well, you're talking about
children, right? These are mainly youth offenders. Once you label a child...
I would say there would be a hell of a lot of folk in that riot that was over 16 years old.
I think if you start to label under 18s as offenders, that starts a cycle.
I'm not labelling anyone offenders. What I'm looking at is totally unacceptable
Well, they probably
behaviour.
wouldn't actually get into prison because they're completely overcrowded.
Well, then what do you do?
Well, how is labelling them an offender, putting them in a prison, giving them a criminal record, then they come out of prison, re-offend?
OK. What do you do? What do you label this person? What do you do with them?
You prevent the crime from happening.
They've done it now.
If the state doesn't respect the youth, which it doesn't at the moment, then the youth are not going to respect the state.
Oh, so this is the fault of the state.
We have mass inequality in this country at the moment. 171 billionaires and some of the highest rates.
What's that got to do with folk breaking the law and raiding JD Sports?
Do you think people just wake up in the morning and say, I think I'm going to raid JD Sports today? Or do you think that it happens
because... now making excuses for lawless
the reasons
behaviour.
for crime are based...
young street rats to be able to go into shops, to take whatever they want, to shoplift, to have no repercussions from the police. You think that's
I want
acceptable?
us to address the socioeconomic reasons behind crime so that we don't raise a generation that wants to break into JD Sports.
Suzanne, there's a huge issue with this, by the way, which is that this has been inspired by social media,
oh
and
my
particularly
goodness.
TikTok, which is out of control now because it encourages these mobs to arrive at the same place in big numbers, which does make it very difficult for the police.
But we're behaving as though this is something new. It isn't. This has been going on for decades. Just 2 weeks ago, the Co-op put out a video that was absolutely shocking, and it talked about how some communities where they had shops were becoming no-go areas, not just because of soaring retail crime and violent crime that they described as looting on some occasions as well, but because, and this is where I disagree with you, Sean, about it's not just Sadiq Khan's fault, the police won't act. The police have allowed shoplifters...
It's got to be over £200. They have to have CCTV footage.
But they don't have the numbers of the police to attend to it. The police have been cut over the last 13 years by 33%.
I'm talking now, if you don't mind.
Right.
What's happened is that over the last decades, crime, petty crime, so-called petty crime, which isn't petty if you're on the receiving end, has been ignored.
But
I remember years ago watching a documentary, and I was only a teenager myself, so we're going back a long time, watching a documentary about a couple of years about parents who said, I can't control my child, I don't know what I've done wrong. And the reporter asked them, well, when did you first sense your child misbehaving? Well, they were shoplifting, but all kids do that, don't they? And I thought, well, there's your problem.
Indeed.
You've got a society that doesn't respect the fact that crime starts at a low level, and if it's not checked and it's not clamped down on, it gets worse.
But I think a lot of this, by the way, I really do, is about the true hatred that is being spread online amongst young people about our country. Because, of course, we know vast swaths of the left struggle to hide their hate for Britain. But this next clip has sparked a furious reaction online for its outright ignorance. So this is the moment an Englishman went on a viral rant about his own country when asked if British people had culture.
Do British people have culture? English people do not have culture. They are uncultured. They've just stolen from the entire globe. They are essentially racist people because we just stole from the entire planet. Our national dish is chicken tikka masala. What the f*** is that about? We have about as much culture as a bit of pavement that's been painted over of horse shit. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, funny. I mean, firstly, I thought fish and chips was our national dish, but anyway...
No, I think it was chicken tikka masala, actually.
Lad was slaughtered by patriotic Brits for his South
I think he was just slaughtered.
One judge, I see, white, liberal, middle-class guilt has got itself a new spokesman. Another said no culture. What about Shakespeare, Marlowe, Austen, Orwell, Huxley, the Beatles? Here. Don't forget GB News in that list. But come on, Amy. Come on, these are your people. Why do you hate our country so much?
I think that young man might be feeling frustrated. He's potentially at university about to not get a grade because all the university lecturers are on strike. Oh, because they want fair working conditions. That's terrible, isn't it? He probably can't get an NHS appointment. He's probably had quite rubbish education because of
we have cost some of the best universities in the world.
Can I just ask? Are you proud of British culture?
Oh, very much so. I love the Spice Girls. I love Oasis. I love prawn cocktail crisps. We've been here before. I'm not proud of the current government. The current government makes a mockery of our history and our democracy.
What about our history?
I am so proud.
What about our history?
So much to do with Britain.
What about our history? What about what we've given to the world?
Are you trying to get me to sort of go into British colonial history? Because I feel this is where we're heading.
Because what he's talking about, Suzanne, is the fact that Britain's given nothing to the world. Actually, I'd argue that without us and without our great colonising of...
our great colonising?
This is where I do...
Actually, society would be...
This is where I do agree with Amy, because I don't think education has been good enough.
Tonight, like that.
Exactly. Education hasn't been good enough about promoting British culture and showing what it did good for the rest of the world. It's definitely focused, I think, now on the kind of negatives, of which there are negatives. Of course there are. Every country and every nation has it.
I think we should be thanked every single day for the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah,
every single day, the rest of the world should be thanked.
The Industrial Revolution has lifted more people out of poverty than any other human activity.
Maybe we should be asking for reparations.
And then maybe the Green Revolution can be the next thing we're proud
Which we are currently leading as is. The problem with this is we are encouraging young people, and TikTok is one of the big sources of this, to hate themselves. And when people hate themselves, then they can be persuaded to do anything.
Very good point. Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole, Suzanne Evans, do stand by, because coming up, Scheming Sturgeon was back in the spotlight at the Edinburgh Fringe. But is she angling for a new career in stand-up after saying she has no regrets over her sick gender reform bill? My Superstar panel give their reaction when they return in the media buzz. But next, did Prince Harry lie on his visa application about his drug use? Well, we're still none the wiser. But the man battling to bring us the answer, Niall Gardner, brings us the latest developments, including the newly proposed SPARE Act. Get it? Niall Gardner, live with the latest from the US, straight after the break.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. And action.
Sergeant Reed, my Superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Fleet Street kingpin Calvin Mackenzie live and uncancelled soon. But first, it's time for foreign policy analyst and director at the Heritage Foundation, Niall Garner. And there have been stunning stateside developments in the Foundation's fight to make Prince Harry's visa records public after he was granted permission to reside in America despite his admissions of drug use in his hit job memoir, Spare. Despite the Freedom of Information request submitted by the Heritage Foundation twice being rejected by the Department of Homeland Security, citing Harry's right to privacy, the case is now rocking Capitol Hill, with the Florida Congressman Greg Steube launching a new act to require fair enforcement of American visa laws. The cheekily named Spare Act references the Duke specifically, with Steube writing left-wing celebrities like Prince Harry, who have a self-recorded history of illegal drug use, should be subjected to the same standards and enforcement of our country's immigration laws as any other alien. I introduced the Spare Act because individuals should be deported immediately if they are caught lying on their visa applications. So Niall Garner has the latest on this now, live from Washington, D.C. Niall, is there any chance of the Spare Act becoming law?
Well, Dan, great to be here on the show. And as you point out, this is a very significant development in Washington. This is the first piece of congressional legislation that is a byproduct, I think, of the Prince Harry immigration application issue. And we are seeing, for the first time, a member of Congress now calling for accountability from the Biden administration, from the Department of Homeland Security. So it's a significant development. I think this will be likely the first of many interventions to come from US members of Congress. Yes, I do think that the floodgates will be opening. There is intense public interest, of course, in the Prince Harry immigration case in the United States. Even Newsweek has done a poll showing that 54% of Americans want to see the release of Prince Harry's immigration records. So I think this is a development of tremendous significance, and we're likely to see many more members of Congress, I think, jumping into this issue in the course of the coming months. There will also be a second federal court hearing with regard to the Prince Harry immigration records case. That is likely to be held in the autumn, perhaps the late autumn. No date has yet been set. But certainly the heat is on Prince Harry here, and there is tremendous growing pressure on the Department of Homeland Security to release Prince Harry's immigration application, so that the
because if he didn't lie,
exactly what's on.
Yeah, if he didn't lie, what does he have to hide? Niall, my suspicion, though, is that Harry is being protected by his mate Joe Biden in the White House.
Well, that's a very good point. The Biden administration has so far refused to release any information whatsoever regarding Harry's application. They're citing Prince Harry's privacy, even though he is one of the most public figures on the world stage right now, including in the United States. And so the arguments being put forward by the Biden administration are absolutely preposterous. They're stonewalling. They're not cooperating. And I do think you are going to see many more members of Congress who are going to say enough is enough. They want to see answers from the Biden administration. This is an administration that operates without transparency, without accountability, and it's time for US officials to come clean with regard to Harry's application, what's in it.
Indeed.
Did he receive any kind of preferential treatment? We want to know exactly what Harry put down on that application.
Surely in the public interest. Yeah, and it's surely in the public interest now. Now, look, let's be realistic about this. is it possible that Harry will be deported with Biden as president, or will we have to wait for a potential second term of a President Donald Trump, who will, I think, be very supportive of this sort of bill?
Well, that's a great question. I think, firstly, with regard to the Biden administration, they will do all they can to try and stop the release of Harry's records.
They will. They'll protect him.
Ultimately be decided by a federal judge. But if those records are released, and if it is found that Prince Harry has lied on his application, there will be tremendous public pressure for Harry to be deported from the United States. Now, if you have a Republican president in place, you can be sure that a Republican leader would strictly enforce US immigration laws. And if Harry has broken those laws by lying on his application, I'm in no doubt that a Republican president would swiftly remove him from the United States.
Fascinating. We may see Harry and Meghan campaigning even harder for Joe Biden at the next election, Niall, if that is the case. Brilliant to have you, as always. That's Niall Gardner of the Heritage Foundation. But coming up in Uncancelled, the mask slipped once again for BBC Impartiality, with Radio 4 presenter Nick Robinson misquoting Lee Anderson to fit his Liberal agenda. So can we stop the small boats in the face of the lefty establishment? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie joins me live to respond. But next in the media buzz, as Nicola Sturgeon claims she has no regrets over her sick gender reform bill. Yeah, right. We ask, does extreme gender ideology risk erasing womanhood across the UK? My superstar panel debate that next.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest broadcast for GB News. I'm Greg Dewhurst. We're going to see increasing risk of showers as we move towards the weekend, but there will be some sunny spells, just turning a little cooler too. If we look at the bigger picture, this area of low pressure moves in another area of low pressure for the weekend, bringing the risk of showers, though not as windy as recent weekends. For this evening, it's been fine end to the day for many, but we do have this area of rain pushing north and eastwards. It could be heavier for a time across Northern Ireland as it crosses into Scotland too. Elsewhere, generally quite a cloudy, warm, muggy night to come. A lot of cloud around, some drizzle over the hills. Temperatures remaining in double figures, 17, 18 degrees as a low for some of us. Bit of a cloudy start to Friday, still some rain across Scotland, heavy at times, pushing away northeastwards, and then slowly through the morning it starts to brighten up. We could see this area of cloud push into southeast England though to give some showery rain for the afternoon. Elsewhere, bright afternoon, sunny spells and scattered showers, turning breezy around western coast, making it feel a little cooler here. Still highs reaching 27 degrees towards East Anglia. And then Saturday, this low approaches us, gives spells of rain across the north and the west of the UK as the winds pick up. Best of the drier, brighter weather holding on towards the southeast. But even here we'll see some showers moving in later on in the day and quite blustery. Temperatures a little cooler too, and that continues into Sunday and Monday with further showers and temperatures a little below average.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. More front pages are in. To The Guardian, whose headline reads, PM will go down in history for failing on climate. Guess who told the newspaper that in an exclusive interview? The head of Greenpeace. Greenpeace, which was recently on the roof of the Prime Minister's house after a despicable invasion. I actually believe Greenpeace should now be declared an eco-terrorist organisation. The Times leads on the shocking impact of the strike on the NHS, with almost 1 million appointments cancelled so far and waiting lists at a record high. They also feature a striking image of migrants crossing the Channel. Any women there? Any children there? Any elderly men there? Nope, can't see any. Not sure about you. The Daily Star indulges in some climate crisis hype by saying Brits are swapping traditional holiday favourites such as the Costa del Sol for boring Belgium to beat global warming. Honestly, why on earth would you choose to go on holiday to Belgium? I think Belgium is probably the worst country I've ever visited. It is so dull. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, the journalist and political commentator Suzanne Evans, the Conservative pair Lord Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Now, former First Minister Scheming Sturgeon was discussing her failed gender recognition reform bill with an audience at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival today, and despite the legislation helping to destroy her legacy, Sturge still doesn't seem willing to let it go.
I don't have regrets about the way I handled it. I mean, I frequently see references to Nicola Sturgeon's gender recognition bill. This is a bill that was passed by over a 2/3 majority of the Scottish Parliament. There were members of all parties voted for it. So, it's not my policy, it was my government that proposed it.
You seem as if you're distancing yourself from it by saying...
No, I voted for it. I'd vote for it again tomorrow if it came up in Parliament. So I'm not distancing myself from it at all.
The gender madness stubborn Sturgeon helped to create is spreading south of the border too, with London's private Cromwell Hospital tonight facing accusations of erasing women on their medical forms instead of asking patients if they are a patient of childbearing potential, which has heralded a chorus of criticism from charities, including the Positive Birth Movement and women's rights campaigners like Maya Forstater. Suzanne, You're furious about this move by the Cromwell Hospital, aren't you?
Livid.
Are you equally as furious to see Scheming Sturgeon just be totally tone deaf to the damage that her bill did?
Look, she subscribes to the first rule of politics: never apologise, never explain. There's no way she's going to back down on anything because she's just not. That's just not in her DNA. She's not the kind of woman to apologise for anything. So of course she said what she said. But this hospital, I'm sorry. Medics ignoring biological reality. Any doctor
You are now
or nurse...
not a woman, you are a patient of childbearing potential.
As you say, I'm livid. I'm basic. You know, I thought we had got over this thing about women being reduced to the sum of their bodily parts. But now here it is, 21st century, decades after feminism, it's back with a vengeance. I'm being eradicated. People like me are being eradicated. Women are no longer women. We're no longer our own thing. We are just something that is a sum of our body parts that could just as easily be shared with men.
Amy,
it's disgraceful.
Isn't it terrible that women are being eradicated like this?
Well, they're not being eradicated.
What?
So you don't need to worry. Fear not. We're here. This was about MRI scans. And if you're pregnant and you have an MRI scan, it can be incredibly dangerous. So they used a form that was inclusive of trans men. That's all that happened here. It's just inclusive of trans men. Women, trans men...
But that means you can't call women women. Using your logic.
Absolutely doesn't.
Well, no, they don't. They don't call them women. They call them patients of childbearing deliberately.
So this is perhaps a bit of an excessive example. That doesn't make a generalisation.
Well, it does.
Women...
This is the problem. This is becoming more and more general. It is becoming absolutely complete
as a woman, as we're women, we should be more worried about more pressing issues in the NHS, such as the maternity.
Well, no, we're talking about
maternity death.
Don't do what about Tory. We're talking about this short.
But this doesn't affect the patient outcomes, does it?
What confuses me is why we're only confused about what a woman is.
You're not confused.
Why doesn't that form say something like, you know, people who can provide sperm or some nonsense like that?
Because it's literally not relevant to that form.
It never applies to men.
Never applies to men. It's only women that are being erased.
Yes. What I want to ask women in general is, where are the feminists? The feminists need to make a stand on this because they're eradicating.
Well, they're here. Look, we've got Suzanne, we've got Maya Forstater, we've got J.K. Rowling. There's a lot of feminists.
No, but the feminists are making a noise, but
I disagree. I get
you mean
the more radical ones, the ones who made such a push in the 50s and the 60s, where are they now? They've got to say something. They've got to join. They've got to join the brave feminists who've come out.
Why is it brave? Why is it brave to be an anti?
Hang
on a minute.
Okay, if
why?
You call me anti-trans, Amy, I'm going to be very cross.
I'm not going to call. Well, I don't know yet.
There you go. It's even in your own language.
I don't understand why you think it is brave to deride and erase a minority that is generally targeted
don't ever tell me
negatively.
About minorities. I know more about being a minority than you're ever going to know.
Then why are you comfortable? Why are you comfortable with this then?
The reason it's brave is because people do what you just did. Just because someone doesn't have your opinion, you then turn them into a demon.
Yeah.
You immediately
and say that they're trying to erase trans people.
I wasn't trying to erase trans people.
No, I'm saying that
this is not about trans rights. I'm asking why we are busy erasing women. And for you to then transpose that on top of it and is just how people eradicate people.
You said it was brave for people to exclude trans people.
No, I did not.
You said trans exclusionary radical feminists are brave.
I said nothing at all. What I said was it is brave
for
people to come out and ask the question, why
then
are
you
women
are
being
saying
erased?
it is brave
why,
to be transphobic.
People who work in academia, who work in the medical profession, who are terrified to speak out, to the point where if they want to go on any kind of march or protest supporting people like
they risk everything.
They risk everything and they have to go in disguise.
Indeed. No, look, both sides of the story here on GB News. So Philip Luce, who is the chief executive of Cromwell Hospital, I think he's been speaking to Amy because he said in a statement, "We are proud to be an inclusive hospital, welcoming patients across all diversity groups. It's essential that we know if someone is pregnant ahead of an MRI scan." Now, woke Disney is embroiled in yet another gender war after they hired TikTok influencer Sean Altman to model clothing for girls. Watch this.
Let's get dressed. Today, we're looking at the most iconic friend group, Disney's Mickey and Friends. And the character most like me is Minnie Mouse. And I have the most perfect dress to start the look. It even has little Mickeys on it, and I love how bold of a red it is. It's just like Minnie.
Now, stick with me on this, because it's a bit complicated. Sean uses he, him pronouns, but claims he's gender fluid, meaning a non-fixed gender that changes over time. So clearly he's currently in a Minnie Mouse phase. Furious critics saying this could be Disney's Bud Light moment after their ad featuring trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney sent the brand's market value plummeting. Disney's obsession, by the way, with woke-washing has already led to box office bombs like the film Elemental, which includes the studio's first ever non-binary character and had the worst opening weekend in 28 years for Disney. So, again, Suzanne, this is so complicated, isn't it? Why is there someone who's gender non-binary, a he, him, being chosen by Disney to be paid to model Minnie Mouse clothes?
It's quite simple, because Disney's an absolute idiot organisation for doing this. And what really incensed me about that clip you've just seen is there we have a man behaving in the most stereotypical, bitchy, obscene way about it. Oh, I'm a little girly woman. Aren't I wonderful? I've got a pretty dress.
It's the Dylan Mulvaney thing.
It's disgusting.
But you love
I hate
that.
it.
I just find that incredible that you could watch that really joyful, lovely clip and call it obscene. I watched that and I saw somebody who's very happy, very joyful, radiating positivity, trying on a dress.
Into a ditzy stereotype.
I think he's just being himself.
Women like you
he's just being himself.
Have been trying to.
He's not claiming to be a woman. He's claiming to be himself, and he looks great.
Well,
and that's pretty much the end of it.
The thing I'd say, if a man did what he did, he'd be accused of denigrating women.
What? I just don't understand. What is this?
But the important thing is, if Disney want to do that, that's Disney's business. It literally is their business, and they can do as they like.
Hence why people are switching off.
But it is affecting their bottom line. A lot of Americans are saying we will no longer stand for this, and you're seeing it reflect itself. Their 4 latest films have been colossal bombs, and if Disney want to be a campaign organisation, that's well within their rights. But I reckon their shareholders will have something to say.
They've lost 11.7 million subscribers in 3 months. Go woke, go broke.
Go broke indeed, Suzanne Evans. All three of you stand by, please, because coming up, Rishi Sunak may have just come back from holiday, but he's already earned a nomination in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Stay with me to find out if he's one of tonight's winners. But next, in Uncancelled, Bitter Bee presenter Nick Robinson failed to hide his lefty bias again after wrongly claiming Lee Anderson said asylum seekers should F off home. So is this further proof that the BBC and its cabal of metropolitan elites are out of touch with real Britain? Fleets ready to come. Calvin Mackenzie fired up, and he's going to join me live, Uncancelled, in just 2 minutes' time.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GBNews,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And shocking statistics today revealed that 100,000 illegal migrants have now crossed the English Channel since 2018, with 60,000 arriving in the last 18 months alone. This influx led Conservative Party Deputy Chair Lee Anderson to declare that ungrateful migrants refusing to board the Bibby Stockholm barge should F off back to France. Only for presenter of the BBC's Today programme, Nick Robinson, to twist Lee's words live on air.
How carefully was the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party choosing his language when he suggested that asylum seekers, and I quote, should F off home?
Around an hour later, and in the face of yet more accusations of BBC bias, Robinson clarified his comments.
But the phrase he used was F off back to France. I misquoted him earlier and said F off home. F off back to Francis.
Well, Calvin Mackenzie, I'm sorry, there is a very big difference between those two phrases. Nick Robinson knows it. And this, to me, looks like another clear example of the bias corroding the BBC. Am I wrong?
Well, the reality is you can't get on at the BBC unless you have a leaning towards the centre-left. The idea that there's a right-wing commentator who's doing the Today programme, right, over the last 40, 50 years is for the birds. You will get something at the BBC. You will literally get moved out. And remember, it was only the other week that he had his head bitten off by Nigel Farage when he tried to be a smart aleck about Nigel's political ambitions over the years. So, look, Robinson's no idiot, right? Clever guy. OK, and he has been doing it for years. So when he makes a mistake like that, all he's really showing is the inner workings of his mind. And the reality of it all is this is not going to change. That is I've been railing on about this literally for 3 or 4 decades. Hasn't made the slightest bit of difference. I thought this current Director General has made a better stiff at trying to get some balance in. But at the end of the day, this groupage is in position. They've been there for decades, and they're going to see off yet another Director General. And when Labour come back again, honestly, it will be shocking. It wouldn't surprise me if Corbyn didn't become Director General.
Yes, indeed. And look, he made a big song and dance when he entered the role, Tim Davie. Unfortunately, he was completely defeated by the strike around Gary Lineker, and he rolled over and he made it absolutely clear that everything he said when he entered the job about impartiality being at the heart of his mission, he made it clear either that simply wasn't going to happen because the talent became more powerful than the executives. Now, look, writing this... sorry, Calvin, you go.
The problem is that job is both the editor and the chief executive. That is simply not possible. And so if they split them in half, as they should do, then, of course, the editor would have to respond to the board, and then you might get a change in the political aspects of it. But I wouldn't bet on it. The truth about the matter, if you meet any of the BBC guys, they all live in rather nice houses in rather nice parts of London. Everything's going rather well. And as long as they pretend to be on the left, they'll be in the job for 30 or 40 years. Immediately they're on the right, they'll be on the outer.
Indeed. Now, look, writing yesterday in an ill-judged and shamefully partisan tweet that was swiftly deleted, suspended Labour MP Diane Abbott used the death of 40 migrants off the coast of Italy to quip, "These migrants have indeed effed off to the bottom of the sea." It comes just 4 months after Abbott was suspended by the Labour Party for suggesting Jews did not face racism. So, Calvin, of course, this was Abbott trying to cleverly respond to the comments made by Lee Anderson. But do you think she needs to be permanently expelled by Slippery Starmer after this latest outburst?
Well, the truth is she's an independent now, really, isn't she? So you're coming to the end of the whole game now. I mean, and so only the Labour Party would keep her in. That last tweet, I suspect she didn't write anyway. She hasn't got enough brain power, I don't think, to come up with even with a nasty line like that. So the reality is you're seeing the end of Diane Abbott. But what goes on inside her mind represents a good chunk of the Labour Party now. So I think when people come to vote next time, although they've kept enormously quiet now, the reality is they represent between 25 and 30% of that party. And when they get to power, more leftists will get in. than the right is within the Labour Party, and then we'll see what happens. And I guarantee to you that the minute they get in, the RMT, ASLEF, the doctors will all get their money, and they'll be able to give a big V sign to the Conservative Party, who are trying to hold the line on inflation. So I'm afraid GB News viewers, it won't come as a surprise to them, but I think to everybody else, that when Labour get to power, as I expect they will do, then I'm afraid we are in for a shocking, bumpy ride.
Goodness gracious me. Yeah, I think we've seen the true face of Labour this week, and Abbott, and of course, the eco-lunatic, you know, the zombie guy with his face painted, Alistair Streatham, who they've chosen to be their candidate in the mid-Bedfordshire by-election. You know, he's one of these eco-extremists, and that's who they've chosen. That's the real face of the Labour Party. Carl Mackenzie, brilliant stuff. We will speak Monday night. Thank you very much. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel returns. Suzanne Evans, let's kick off, please, with your nominee for tonight's Greatest Britain.
So it's Sunday Telegraph editor Alistair Heath, who, apart from being an amazing journalist generally, has this week been talking a lot about net zero and how anti-democratic it is. He's pointed out the true cost of it to our lifestyle and our pockets. And, none of us voted to be colder and poorer, and that's the upshot of it. Well done, Alistair, for exposing it.
Yeah, no, indeed. I think Alistair Heath's columns in the Daily Telegraph get better each week. They are absolutely essential reading, and I think it's the most telling takedown of net zero I've ever read. And I just wish the rest of the country would understand what we'd signed up to. Sean Bailey, your nominee for Greatest Britain.
My nominee is slightly more mundane, but just as important. It's the GB News Don't Ban Cash campaign. It is so fundamental, from giving tips in a restaurant to teaching young people how to budget, to helping poor families control their money more equally, and supporting, of course, our local high streets. The losing of cash could be really, really detrimental to large parts of society.
Amy Nicole, your nominee.
I've gone for the NHS doctors. Now, reminder, these are who you applauded not so long ago, and now they've been pushed as a last resort to strike yet again for fair pay and conditions, which they obviously deserve.
I'm actually going to go with Sean Bailey, because the GB News Don't Kill Cash campaign has now been backed by 250,000 of you. It is such an important campaign. I love all the emails you're sending me at the moment, by the way, showing restaurants and other shops and everything who are actually giving customers a discount if they pay by cash. I think that's a really great initiative, and thank you for pointing them out to me. Suzanne Evans, who's your Union Jackass nominee?
Well, you might guess this one. It's the London Cromwell Hospital.
Oh, yeah, I picked up you're a little bit mad.
Because they are raising women for ignoring biological reality, and instead of listening to the quiet majority who know what a woman is, listening to the nasty, vicious and increasingly dangerous trans lobby.
Do you include Amy Nicole in that?
I wouldn't dream to be nasty about someone.
I would be proud to be in the trans lobby.
She'd probably blame me for being a TERF, but there you go. I'm proud of it.
Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My nominee is British universities for unmarked degrees, for filling the places with so many foreign students that our British local talent isn't getting backed. Some of the greatest organisations in the world are failing young British talent. It's time we got them to focus on the job, not just filling their own coffers.
And Amy Nicole, your nominee.
It's Rishi Sunak. He's whipped off the pedal pushers and has been sunning himself in Malibu, but he's fresh and back, and he's having fulfilled precisely none of his mythical pledges, which has been highlighted today by an additional 100,000 people added to NHS waiting lists. So he's not doing a great job, but welcome back to the UK, Rishi Sunak.
Amy Nicole, I find it utterly extraordinary that the bloke is on holiday
He's back now,
with his family. It is his first holiday, I think, in 2 years' time, or maybe even longer, because it was the last holiday was cancelled because of the late Queen's death, and you still find a way to make him your Union Jackass. By the way, apparently, I'm told he's not back in the country.
Oh, is he not back yet? So he's still sunning himself.
So he's still on holiday, and you still found a reason to make him your Union Jackass.
The pecs out,
Look,
that's fine.
I'm going to go with Suzanne Evans
and
the Cromwell Hospital, just because of Suzanne's passion for this issue. So thank you very much to my fabulous superstar panel tonight. Suzanne Evans, Amy Nicole, you're going to have to go and make up in the green room. And Sean Bailey too. Thank you for your company all week. I hope you have a superb weekend. Patrick Christie's is here in for Mark Dolan tomorrow night from 9 p.m. I'm back on Monday night, of course, where we'll have Lady Colin Campbell, Phil Dampier, Calvin McKenzie, Neil Oliver and Lawrence Fox. Headliners next. Good night.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest broadcast for GB News. I'm Greg Dewhurst. We're going to see increasing risk of showers as we move towards the weekend, but there will be some sunny spells